Who knows what goes on in the mind of a customer when you're about to ask them for an order? When it gets close to this crucial stage, there's almost always something that can jeopardise all your hard work if you don't handle it properly. Often the words the customer uses when they have an objection can mislead you. Sometimes it won't even sound like an objection at all. In this episode, we look at the 3 C's of handling objections. That is, 3 common sources where objections come from in the first place. Understanding the source of an objection is vital to make sure we can deal with it properly. Most of the typical objections customers raise will come from one of 3 sources. In this episode, our objectives are to understand how customers articulate an objection, identify these 3 common sources of customer objection, work out some ways to handle the different types, and finally, for me to give you a word of caution about jumping to the wrong conclusion sometimes when you first apply this learning. As we know, much of the motivation to buy comes from an emotional need, and people are sometimes unclear in the way they express that need. If they have something they want to clear up in their own mind, they don't always know how to bring it up, or even the words to use. Whatever it is though, there's usually some underlying source to their objection. To simplify things, we narrow this down to 3 possible sources, and each source needs handling in a different way. We call this the 3 C's of objection handling. The first C stands for confusion. If confusion is the main source of the customer's objection, it usually means there's something they just didn't understand. For example, if you try to close the sale and the customer says, "Well, I'd like more time to think about the training plan," maybe they just didn't understand that your product comes with a fully inclusive online training course. The best way to handle a lack of understanding is to educate the customer. This provides an excellent opportunity to build a closer relationship if handled properly. By the way, notice how the customer doesn't give you much of a clue. They don't tell you they don't understand something. You have to work that out. The second C stands for concern. The customer may be worried about taking a risk. They may have fears over your company's track record. Maybe they're an existing customer of yours who's had a bad experience in the past. In this case, it's crucial to address their concern. Maybe as you try to close, the customer says, "I'm not sure about this new product of yours." They're probably concerned about something that hasn't been properly tried and tested in the marketplace yet. One of the best ways to handle this, once you've made sure this is the genuine source, is to provide some reference or case study based on a recent success story for your company. Once again, be wary here. Notice that the customer didn't say, "Ooh, I'm concerned, you'd better show me a reference site." That's something you have to work out. The third C is for competition. Sometimes the objection can be a trap set for you by a competitor. This can be quite tricky to deal with, and we give you more help in dealing with competition when we get to unique. If you're in a highly competitive market, you can find yourself in a bit of a minefield here. Basically what you need to do is identify the trap, dismantle it, and set a new one for your competitor. If you do this skillfully, you can have a lot of fun. For example, you get to the point of closing the sale and the customer says, "I'd like to buy from you, but your product's not very reliable." Well, you know your competitor's been spreading rumours about your company's reliability, so you've identified this as a trap. This one you can dismantle by offering some customers references to demonstrate good levels of reliability. Now you can set a trap in return. You could say, "What's more, all of our products are fully trialled in the field before we start to sell them." You wouldn't want to buy a product that wasn't fully tested before release, would you? Now, when your competitor tries to sell one of their latest offerings, they'll be asked about their policy on testing their products before they release them. So you can have some fun with this if you understand what's happening behind the scenes. Now, a word of caution though. Let's take an example of a typical objection to show how easy it might be to answer it incorrectly if you get things wrong. Imagine you just got to the point of asking the customer for their order, and unexpectedly they say, "Well, I'd be prepared to go ahead, but you're too expensive." This is often what we call a price objection. Now, this might just be a bit of negotiation by the customer, but it could come from any one of the 3 C's. It may come from confusion, in which case you could educate your customer and explain your price structure to them again to make sure they understand it. But if it's about a concern, the customer may really be saying, "This is a lot of money and I'm concerned about the risk I'm taking." If this were the case, you would swing into action and address their concern by maybe taking the customer on a reference visit, or offering them a refund if they were not happy within 90 days. In other words, you'd handle the objection in a completely different way. Just to make things more complicated, what if one of your competitors was the original source of the objection? They've just offered a huge discount to undercut your price, and in all other respects the customer is happy with what they're being offered. Well, now we've just walked into a trap. First, dismantle the trap by justifying your price. Then set a new trap by saying, for example, "Well, we're very proud of the high quality of our products, so we don't offer large discounts. Surely you wouldn't want to buy something as important as this on price alone." Now you've made your competitor's product look cheap and of lower quality. When they try to drop their price to win the business, this will make the customer more wary about buying their cheap and cheerful offering. By the way, notice how we've done this without directly criticising our competitor or even mentioning their name. Good stuff, eh? But see how each different source needs handling in a different way. So your first task before making your response is to clearly identify the source of the objection. For now, reflect on the different ways customers might raise objections about your products or services, and try to have some ready-made responses. The next thing to think about is, how do I make sure I'm giving an appropriate answer to the objection? So to do this, move on to our next episode to look at the golden rules of objection handling. Later, we'll give you some examples of common objections and some ways of dealing with them. For now, from me, Mike Wilshire, I hope you start putting what you've learned into practice straight away, and that you enjoy exploring the 3 C's of where objections come from when you next speak to a customer.